A single mom, desperate and hungry, approaches a mafia don. What she asks for is simple, but the consequences will change both their lives forever. A story of forbidden protection, dark secrets, and an unexpected love that defies a dangerous world. If you're new here, subscribe and comment your location. Now let's begin. The rain fell hard on the streets of the city. It was cold. Elena Rossi pulled her thin coat tight and looked up at the sign, Vittorio's Ristorante. The windows were warm and gold. Inside, people laughed and ate big plates of food. Her stomach hurt with hunger, but this wasn't for her. This was for her daughter, Lucy. Lucy was 7. She was home in their little apartment, tucked in bed with a fever. The medicine was gone. The food was gone. Elena's last dollars had paid the heating bill. She had nothing left. No family, no friends who could help, only a terrible idea. She had heard the stories, Don Vittorio. They said he was a wolf in a suit. They said he owned this restaurant and many other things, dark things. People feared him, but they also said he had a code. He respected courage. Elena's courage was all used up. All she had left was a mother's fear. She pushed the heavy door open. The smell of garlic and baking bread hit her like a physical force. A man in a black suit stood near the host's desk. He was big. He had a hard face. He looked at her wet coat and her old shoes. His eyes were cold. "Can I help you?" he said. His voice was not friendly. I need to speak to Don Vittorio," Elena said. Her voice was a whisper. The man smirked. "He doesn't see people, especially not wet strays." "Please, it is about a debt, a family debt." The lie felt heavy on her tongue. It was the only thing she could think to say. The man's smirk faded. He studied her. Then he nodded toward the back of the restaurant. "Wait there, don't move." Elena stood by the kitchen door, shivering. She saw him, Don Vittorio. He sat at a corner table alone. He was older, maybe in his 50s. His hair was gray at the temples. He wore a dark gray suit that looked expensive. He was reading a newspaper. He did not look like a monster. He looked like a tired, powerful man. He finished his wine, dabbed his mouth with a napkin, and looked up. His eyes found her immediately. They were the color of slate. They saw everything. The big man leaned down and whispered to him. Don Vittorio listened. Then he put his paper down. He lifted one hand, a small motion. "Bring her." Elena walked to the table. Her legs felt like water. She stopped in front of him. He didn't speak. He just waited. "Signor Vittorio," she began, her voice trembling. "My name is Elena Rossi. I am sorry to bother you. I do not want money. I have a little girl at home. She is sick. She is hungry. I was wondering if the kitchen had any food they were going to throw away. Just a little pasta, some bread. Anything. I can work for it. I can clean. I can do anything." She forced herself to look into his eyes. She saw no anger there. No pity either. Just a deep, calm calculation. "You come to me," he said finally. His voice was low and rough, like stones grinding. "You know who I am. You ask for scraps. Why not go to a church? A shelter?" "I have tried. There is no help left, and I am not asking for a handout. I am asking to work for a meal, for her, not for me." He leaned back in his chair. His gaze flicked to her left hand. No wedding ring. "Your husband?" "Gone, 2 years." He looked at the big man. "Paul, tell Marco to make up a plate, the veal saltimbocca, the good bread, the lemon cake, put it in a proper takeaway box." Paul's eyes widened. "Boss, that's—" "Do it," Vittorio said, his voice leaving no room for question. He looked back at Elena. "Sit." She sat slowly on the edge of the chair. She was so stunned she couldn't speak. He wasn't giving her scraps. He was giving her a feast. "A child should not be hungry," he said, as if explaining something simple. "A mother should not have to beg. Where do you live?" She told him the address, a poor block at the edge of his territory. He nodded slowly. Paul returned with a large, elegant bag, not a cardboard box. The smell from it made Elena's head swim. Vittorio stood up. He took the bag from Paul and held it out to her. "Take this, feed your daughter, get her medicine." He pulled a wallet from his jacket. He took out all the cash inside. It was a thick stack of $100 bills. He put it on the table and slid it toward her. "This is for the work you offered to do. Consider the job done." Elena stared at the money. It was more than she had seen in a year. I cannot. You can, and you will. His tone was final. Paul will drive you home, it's raining. No, please, I can walk, It is not a request, Alina. He said her name for the first time. It sounded different in his voice, not soft but definite, like she was now a fact he had to deal with. Go, take care of your girl. Paul led her out a back door to a big, black car. The ride was silent. When they reached her crumbling apartment building, Paul carried the food bag to her door. He even gave her a small nod before leaving. Inside, little Lucy was asleep, her forehead hot. Alina woke her gently. Look, baby, look what we have. Lucy's eyes got big. They ate the tender veal, the buttery potatoes, the soft bread. They shared the lemon cake. It was the best food Alina had ever tasted. She used some of the cash to run to the all-night pharmacy for medicine. That night, she tucked Lucy in, her belly full, her fever already coming down. Alina sat at the kitchen table and cried silent tears of relief and of fear. Because men like Don Vittorio did not do things for free. What had she just started? The next day, there was a knock at the door. It was not Paul. It was a younger man, nicer looking, in a simple jacket. He had a bag of groceries: milk, eggs, fruit, chicken soup. Don Vittorio sent these, the young man said with a kind smile. I'm David. He said to check if your little one is better. Alina was too shocked to refuse. She is. Thank you. Please thank him. David came the next day, too, and the day after that. He didn't just bring food. He fixed the lock on Alina's door that had been broken for months. He brought a space heater that worked better than her old radiator. After a week, Alina couldn't take the uncertainty. She had to see Vittorio. She had to understand. She left Lucy with a neighbor, a woman who suddenly became very friendly after seeing David's visits, and went back to the restaurant in the afternoon before it opened. Paul was there. He saw her and didn't stop her. He just opened the door to Vittorio's office. Vittorio was at a desk, looking at papers. He looked up. He didn't seem surprised. The food, the help, thank you, Alina said, standing stiffly. But I need to know why. What do you want from me? He put his pen down. Sit, Alina, she sat. I want nothing from you. Your daughter's name is Lucy. Yes. Lucy deserves to be warm and fed. That is all. But people say you are a criminal, he finished for her. A faint, cold smile touched his lips. They are right. I am, but my business is with other criminals, not with sick children, your husband. His name was Antonio Rossi. Alina's blood went cold. How do you know that? I make it my business to know things. Antonio worked as a driver for the wrong people, the Morty family. Alina's hands started to shake. Antonio had told her he was a driver for a rich businessman. He died in a car accident. The police said it was just an accident, but the look in Vittorio's eyes told her the whole terrible truth. He borrowed money from them to pay for your wedding, to get this apartment. He fell behind. The accident was not an accident, was it? Alina shook her head, tears finally falling. No, I think I always knew it was. The debt did not die with him, Vittorio said, his voice becoming very quiet and very dangerous. The Mortys still consider it owed, by you. The room spun. I don't have any money. They do not want money from a waitress. They want other things. They have been watching you, waiting for you to be desperate enough to work for them, to trap you. My man David saw one of their soldiers watching your building last week. That is why I sent him. That is why the groceries come. Alina felt sick. The kindness wasn't kindness. It was what? Are you protecting me from them? Why? Vittorio stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at the city, his city. Because they are animals, and because you walked in here and asked for work, not charity, because you looked me in the eye. He turned to her. The debt is gone. Consider it paid. How? I have spoken to Salvatore Morty. We have an understanding. Alina knew that in his world, an understanding meant violence or threat of violence. What does that mean for me? For Lucy? It means you are under my protection now. The Mortys will not touch you. They will not come near you. You are safe. The word safe sounded so strange coming from him. What do I have to do? Live your life, raise your daughter, be a good mother. He paused. That is all. But that wasn't all. Elena started to see things. A black car parked on her street at night, different from David's. It was there to watch, to protect. Vittorio's men, Paul and David and others, became quiet shadows in her life. They didn't bother her. They just were there. David helped Lucy with a school project on bridges. Paul, the scary one, secretly left a new pink backpack at her door before the first day of school. And Vittorio, he started to come himself, always in the daytime, always with a reason. He brought a book for Lucy, a big illustrated copy of Pinocchio in Italian. He sat in Elena's small living room, looking huge and out of place, and drank the coffee she made. He asked Lucy about school. He listened to her stories with a serious face. He never smiled, not quite. But his eyes, those hard slate eyes, would soften just a little. One afternoon, he found Elena crying. The landlord had raised the rent. She couldn't afford it, even with her job at the dry cleaner. Vittorio didn't say a word. He just picked up his phone. Paul, the building on Oak Street, the one the Greek owns, buy it, today. He put the phone down. Your rent will not change, ever. The landlord works for me now. Elena stared at him. You can't just buy a building. I can, I did. He looked at her tears. Elena, you are under my protection. That means your home, your safety, your peace. It is all part of the deal, no more tears. It was too much. The power he wielded was frightening. But the way he used it for her, it was confusing her heart. She was starting to look forward to his visits, to the quiet, solid way he filled the silence. Lucy absolutely adored him. She called him Uncle Vito. Months passed. Winter turned to spring. Elena felt safer than she had ever felt in her life. But Vittorio's world was not safe. One evening, David drove Elena and Lucy home from the movies. As they turned onto their street, David's body went stiff. Get down, he yelled. Elena pulled Lucy to the car floor. She heard a loud pop, pop, pop sound. Glass shattered. The car swerved. David cursed, fighting the wheel. They screeched to a halt behind a dumpster. Stay here, don't move. David barked, pulling a gun from under his seat. He jumped out. Elena held Lucy, who was crying in fear. She heard shouts, running feet, then more of those horrible popping sounds. Then silence. After what felt like forever, the car door opened. It was Paul. His knuckles were bloody. It's clear, they're gone, Morty's idiots, trying to send a message. He looked at Elena's white face. They weren't shooting at you, they were shooting at him, at the boss, because of you. Paul drove them, not home, but to Vittorio's restaurant. The boss was in his office. His suit jacket was off. He was on the phone, his voice a controlled roar. On a street with children, Sal. You break our agreement, you piece of filth. This means war. He slammed the phone down. He saw Elena and Lucy in the doorway. The rage on his face melted into something else, raw fear. He crossed the room in 2 strides and knelt in front of Lucy. Piccolina, are you hurt? Are you okay? Lucy shook her head, still trembling. He pulled her into a hug, a real hug. Over her head, his eyes met Elena's. The emotion in them was so fierce it stole her breath. They touched what is mine, he said, his voice low and deadly. That cannot stand. Yours, Elena whispered. He stood up, still holding Lucy's hand. Yes, mine, my family. I have tried to do this quietly, to keep you separate. But they have drawn a line. They see you as a weakness. I must show them they are wrong. You will stay here tonight. In the rooms upstairs, it is safe. That night, Elena put Lucy to sleep in a lavish bedroom above the restaurant. She walked out to the sitting room. Vittorio was there, standing by the window, a glass of dark liquor in his hand. I am sorry, he said without turning. I brought this danger to your door. I thought I could shield you. You have shielded us, Elena said. You saved us again. He turned. He looked older, tired. It is not enough. I am a man of violence, Elena. This is my life. I cannot give you a normal one. I thought I could watch from a distance, but I cannot. He took a step toward her. When David called and said there were shots, my heart stopped. I have not felt fear like that in 30 years. Elena's own heart was pounding. What are you saying, Vito? I am saying that you and Lucy, you are not a debt to be paid. You are not a charity case. You have become the only good thing in my world. He put his glass down. I am in love with you, Alina. I love your strength. I love your little girl's laugh. I love the way you make this cold place feel like a home when you are here. He reached out and touched her cheek, his rough fingers gentle. I do not expect you to love a man like me, a man with blood on his hands, but I needed you to know. You are under my protection because you are in my heart, and I will destroy anyone who threatens you. Alina looked into his eyes. She saw the Mafia boss, the feared Don, but she also saw the man who bought a building to keep her rent low, the man who read Pinocchio with serious concentration, the man whose heart stopped when she was in danger. The monster and the guardian were the same person. She placed her hand over his. I am not afraid of your hands, Vito. I am afraid of a world without you in it. You have been our shelter, our wall. You have been more of a family to us than anyone. She took a shaky breath. I love you too. He pulled her to him then, and he kissed her. It was not a gentle kiss. It was a claiming, a promise, a vow sealed in the darkness. It was full of all the passion and violence and tenderness that was Vittorio. From that night, everything changed. Alina and Lucy moved into his secure penthouse. They were a family, hidden behind layers of steel and loyalty, but the threat of Morty hung over them like a storm cloud. Vittorio's war with the Morty family began. It was quiet, brutal, and efficient. Businesses were burned. Shipments were hijacked. Key Morty soldiers vanished. But Salvatore Morty was old school. He saw Vittorio's new family as the ultimate target. The plan was simple and cruel. They would take the child. They waited for a school field trip. Lucy's class went to the museum. There were chaperones, teachers, but Morty's men paid off a security guard. As the children walked through a quiet exhibit, two men in fake museum uniforms quietly took Lucy by the arms. Your Uncle Vito sent us, sweetheart. There's an emergency. Come with us. Lucy, trusting and remembering the recent scare, went with them. When Vittorio got the call, the world went red. Paul had been trailing the school bus at a distance. He saw the grab but was blocked by a suddenly stalled truck. He called, his voice choked with fury and shame. Boss, they have her. They took Lucy. I lost them. I'm sorry. Vittorio did not shout. He went very, very still. Alina was screaming, collapsing. He caught her, held her tight. Listen to me, he said, his voice like frozen iron. I will bring her home. I will bring her home safe, or I will burn this city to the ground. Do you believe me? Alina, looking into his eyes, nodded. She believed him. Vittorio's operation became a machine of pure vengeance. Every informant was squeezed. Every enemy was dragged in for questioning. He called in favors from everyone, the Irish, the Russians, even the police captain who was on his payroll. The message was clear: find the girl. He knew it was Morty, but he didn't know where. He put a price of $1 million on Salvatore Morty's head and $2 million for Lucy's safe return. The underworld shook. Meanwhile, in a dusty, abandoned warehouse by the river, little Lucy was scared, but she was her mother's daughter, and she had learned from Uncle Vito. She didn't cry. She watched the two men guarding her. One, named Mark, was young and nervous. The other, James, was mean. My Uncle Vito is going to find you, Lucy said, her small voice clear in the empty space. James laughed. Your Uncle Vito is gonna be dead soon. No, he won't, Lucy said with absolute certainty. He's the strongest. He's my family. Mark, the young one, looked uneasy. He had a little sister Lucy's age. Back at the command center, Vittorio's office, a break came. A low-level Morty associate, terrified of Vittorio's wrath, gave up a location, the old textile warehouses on the West Pier. Vittorio stood up. He took off his suit jacket. He rolled up his sleeves. He took a pistol from his desk drawer and checked it. Then he took an old, well-kept pump-action shotgun from a wall cabinet. Paul, David with me, bring 6 other men. The rest surround the block. No one gets in or out. Boss, let us go in. It's a trap, Paul said. Vittorio's look silenced him. They have my daughter. I'm going to get her. It was midnight when the convoy of black cars stopped a block from the warehouse. Vittorio moved like a shadow, his men fanning out. He went straight for the main door. He didn't use stealth. He walked right up to it. He kicked the door in with a sound like thunder. Inside, James jumped up, pulling his gun. "Vittorio, you're alone. You're dead." "Where is she?" Vittorio's voice echoed in the vast space. "Say goodbye, old man." James aimed. Vittorio didn't flinch. From the shadows to the left, Paul fired once. James dropped. Mark, the young guard, stood up from behind a crate, his hands in the air, shaking. She's here, don't shoot, I didn't hurt her, she's back there." Vittorio ran. In a small, dark office at the back, tied to a chair, was Lucy. Her eyes were wide with fear, but when she saw him, they lit up. "Uncle Vito." He fell to his knees in front of her, cutting the ropes with a knife. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tighter than he had ever held anything. "Piccolina, I've got you. You're safe. I've got you." For the first time anyone had ever seen, a tear fell from Don Vittorio's eye into Lucy's hair. He carried her out, a small girl in his massive arms, wrapped in his coat. He looked at Paul. "Find Salvator, Morty. Bring him to me, alive." They found Morty hiding in a mistress's apartment downtown. They brought him, begging and crying, to the same warehouse. Vittorio sat on a crate, Lucy now safe in a car with David outside. He looked at the broken, old man in front of him. "Please, Vittorio, it was business," Morty cried. "You touched my family," Vittorio said quietly. "That is not business. That is the end of everything." He nodded to Paul. "Make it slow, then send what's left to his brothers." He walked out. He didn't look back. He got in the car and took Lucy's hand. "Take us home, to Alina." The reunion was a storm of tears and held-tight hugs. That night, as Lucy slept between them, exhausted but safe, Alina looked at Vittorio over her daughter's head. "It's over," she said. "No," he said, stroking Lucy's hair. "It is just beginning." He looked at Alina, his gaze clear and determined. "This life, the fighting, the fear, it is not for you, it is not for her. I have built an empire on fear. Now I will build a legacy on love, for you, for Lucy." In the weeks that followed, Don Vittorio began to do the impossible. He started to go legitimate. He sold off his most dangerous operations. He poured his money into the restaurant business, into real estate, into a charity foundation for families in need, in Alina's name. The violence didn't stop overnight, but the message was sent. The old wolf was changing his ways for his new pack. 1 year later, they stood in the garden of a beautiful, safe house in the suburbs. Lucy was playing on the grass. Vittorio took Alina's hand. He got down on one knee. He didn't have a fancy speech. "Alina Rossi," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You asked me for a little food. You gave me back my soul. Will you let me be your husband? Will you let me be Lucy's father officially forever?" Alina, tears of joy streaming down her face, could only nod. "Yes, yes, Vito, always." At the wedding, Lucy was the flower girl. Paul was the best man. David stood as a groomsman. The guests were a mix of old men in suits and new friends from the legitimate world. As Vittorio kissed his bride, he looked over at Lucy's smiling, cheering face. The feared Mafia boss had started with a simple act, a meal for a hungry child. And it had led him here, to a love that melted the ice around his heart, and to a future brighter than he ever dared to dream. The wedding was simple, held in the garden of their new home. But the peace felt fragile. Alina knew the man she married was not just Vito, her husband, but Vittorio, the Don. You don't leave a life like his with a handshake and a farewell party. The first challenge came from within. His men were loyal, but they were loyal to the old ways. To the power, the fear, the easy money. When Vittorio announced he was selling the gambling operations and the protection rackets, there was a quiet, dangerous unrest. His underboss, a man named Marco who had been with him for 20 years, came to the house. He didn't like coming to the house. It was a symbol of the new, soft Vittorio. "Boss," Marco said, standing in the study. "The men are talking. They're nervous. Selling the docks to the Irish. It makes us look weak. Morty is gone, but there are other families. They see this as an opening." Vittorio poured 2 glasses of whiskey. He handed one to Marco. "We are not weak. We are changing. The money from the docks is buying 3 more legitimate cargo companies. The protection money is now a security firm's salary. The men will have jobs, good jobs, with pensions. Marco scoffed, downing the whiskey. Pensions? We are not accountants, Vittorio. We are wolves. You cannot put a wolf in a kennel and feed him dog food. The world is changing, Marco, Vittorio said, his voice low. I am changing. I have a wife, a daughter. I will not have them live behind bodyguards forever. I will not have Lucy's future stained by my past. And what about our futures? Marco's eyes were hard. We bled for this empire, and now you tear it down for a woman and a child you didn't have a year ago. The air in the room turned to ice. Vittorio put his glass down slowly. Careful, old friend, you speak of my family. They are not the reason for the change. They are the reward for it. You can walk this new path with me with a clean title and a safe home for your own family, or you can walk away with a generous payment. But you will not question my decisions and my home again. Do you understand? Marco held his gaze for a long, tense moment. Finally, he looked down. He had seen that look before. It was the look that came before bodies disappeared. I understand, boss. But Marco didn't understand. He saw weakness, not vision. He began to talk to other unhappy soldiers. They planned not to walk away, but to take over. They thought the old lion had lost his teeth. Elena sensed the shift. The men who drove her to the market were different now, less respectful, more watchful. David and Paul remained fiercely loyal, but they were just two men. One afternoon, Elena took Lucy to the park. Paul drove them, as always. But when they arrived, Elena saw a different car, one of Marco, parked a block away. A man watched them with binoculars. They weren't just being protected anymore, they were being watched by the enemy within. That night, she told Vito. Marco's man was at the park. He wasn't there for security, he was scouting. Vittorio's face darkened. He had hoped to manage this transition without more blood, but Marco was forcing his hand. Stay home tomorrow, he said. Do not leave the property. The next day, Vittorio called a meeting of all his captains at the restaurant. It was time for the old lion to remind the pack who he was. The back room was thick with cigar smoke and tension. Marco sat at Vittorio's right hand, a place of honor he no longer deserved. The sales are final, Vittorio announced. The security firm opens next month. Every man here will have a position if he wants it, a real position. This is the way forward. Marco leaned forward. Some of us don't want a position, Vittorio. We like the way things were. We think you've lost your nerve, that you're letting a skirt make your decisions for you. A deadly silence fell. All eyes went to Vittorio. He stood up. He didn't raise his voice. My wife's name is Elena. You will not speak of her again. He walked to the window, his back to them, a sign of either great trust or great contempt. You think I am weak, Marco. You think because I choose not to kill, I cannot. He turned around. His eyes were the eyes of the old Don. I know about your meeting at the warehouse last Tuesday. I know about the money you took from the Giacomo family, thinking I wouldn't notice. I know you promised my men a return to the old days if they followed you. Marco paled. He reached for the gun under his jacket. Don't, Vittorio said softly. At that moment, the doors opened. Paul and David walked in, followed by 4 other men. But they were not Marco's men. They were new faces, young, serious men in crisp suits. Vittorio's new security team, vetted for loyalty to the new vision, not the old wars. The Giacomo family, Vittorio continued, has been paid back, with interest. From your personal account, Marco, you are broke. You have no men, you have no allies, you have nothing. Marco stared, his hand frozen. He was utterly defeated, not by a bullet, but by strategy. By a mind that was always 3 steps ahead. You have a choice, Vittorio said, sitting back down. You can take the pension I offered. You can leave this city and never return, or you can stay and answer for your betrayal. The choice is yours. Marco looked at the hard faces of the new guards. He looked at the other captains who would not meet his eye. He had lost. He stood up, his chair scraping loudly. Without a word, he walked out of the room, out of the restaurant, and out of their lives. Vittorio looked at the remaining men. Any other questions about the new direction? There were none. The internal threat was over, but the external ones remained. The Giacomo family, seeing the transition, decided to test the new, softer Vittorio. They moved in on a nightclub he still owned, a last remnant of the old business. They beat up the bouncers, threatened the staff, demanded a cut. Vittorio could have gone to war. Instead, he went to the city's new mayor, a reformer who owed him a favor. The next day, the police, the fire department, and the health inspector raided every single Giacomo-owned business in the city. Licenses were suspended. Fines were levied. The cost to the Giacomos was 10 times what they hoped to steal from the nightclub. It was a new kind of warfare, clean, legal, and devastating. Years began to pass. Lucy grew from a little girl into a bright, confident teenager. The security firm, Rossi Protection and Logistics, became a respected, legitimate business. Paul ran the operations side. David handled client relations. They wore suits, not tracksuits. They had business cards. Elena started a foundation, Lucy's Table, funded by Vittorio's investments. It provided meals and after-school programs in neighborhoods like the one she used to live in. She was its public face, its heart. Vittorio was its silent, powerful backbone. One evening, 17-year-old Lucy came to Vittorio in his home office. She was applying to colleges. "I want to study law," she said, her chin held high. "I want to help families like mine and Mom's, the ones who get crushed by systems they don't understand." Vittorio felt a swell of pride so immense it hurt. This brilliant, kind young woman saw him as her father. She called him Dad. He had built a wall to keep the world out for her, and she wanted to use what she learned behind that wall to tear down walls for others. "You will be an incredible lawyer, Piccolina," he said, his voice thick. "Any school would be lucky to have you." She smiled, then her expression turned serious. "Dad, I know things about what you used to be, what you did for us. I'm not naive." He tensed. This was the conversation he had dreaded. "I am not a good man, Lucy. I have done terrible things." "You are a good man to me," she said firmly. "You are a good man to Mom. You saved us. And then you changed your whole world to make a better one for us. That's the man I know. That's the man I call my father." Tears filled the old Don's eyes. In that moment, every drop of blood, every moment of fear, every hard choice was worth it. He had been redeemed not by a priest, but by the love of a child he had fed one cold, rainy night. The final test came from the past. A federal investigator, Agent Miller, had been trying for a decade to pin something on Vittorio. He couldn't touch the legitimate businesses, but he knew the history. He tracked down Marco, living in miserable exile. He offered him witness protection, a new identity, in exchange for testimony on the old murders, the old crimes. Marco, bitter and full of hate, agreed. Vittorio got the call from his lawyer. "They're convening a grand jury, Vito. Marco is singing. They have details only an insider would know. This is serious." For the first time in years, Elena saw the shadow of the old fear. They could take him away. They could unravel everything. Vittorio was calm. He held Elena's hand. "Do you trust me?" "With my life," she whispered. "Then do not worry." He met with his lawyer and made one phone call. He called Agent Miller directly. "Miller, Vittorio, I understand you're talking to Marco Bianchi." "I can't discuss an ongoing investigation, Vittorio," Miller said, a note of triumph in his voice. "I am not calling to discuss. I am calling to make a donation to the city's new youth center, a very large, anonymous donation, and to provide some information. The location of 3 unsolved bodies from the Morty era, buried in concrete under the old West Pier, Warehouse 4. I believe that's more valuable than the ramblings of a disgraced, bitter man trying to buy his way out of tax evasion charges." There was a long silence on the line. Miller was a hard man, but he was not stupid. Marco's testimony would be shaky from a co-conspirator. The bodies were physical proof, a major career-making solve, and the youth center donation would make his bosses very happy. "Why?" Miller finally asked. "Because my past is past," Vittorio said, "and my future is my family. I am giving you a victory. Take it. Leave my future in peace." The grand jury was quietly dissolved. Marco's credibility vanished. The bodies were found. Agent Miller got a promotion. And Don Vittorio, once the most feared man in the city, finally, truly, retired. On the day Lucy graduated from law school, they all sat together: Vittorio, Elena, Lucy, Paul, David, and his own family. They were just a family celebrating. Later that night, sitting on the porch of their home, Elena took Vito's hand. It was the same hand that had once doled out violence, now resting gently in hers. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked softly. "The power, the fear." He looked at her, then through the window at Lucy, laughing with David's kids. He saw the life they had built. The clean businesses, the foundation helping hundreds, the love that filled every room of their home. "I had all the power in the world," he said, his voice a low rumble in the dark. "But it meant nothing. It was empty. Then a brave woman asked me for a little food for her hungry child." He brought her hand to his lips and kissed it. "She didn't just ask for food. She asked me to be a man again, and that is the only power I will ever need." He pulled her close, and they watched their daughter, their future, alive and bright and safe. The Mafia boss who had melted his own heart had found, in the end, that it was the only victory that ever really mattered. Vittorio's gaze rested on the joyous scene inside: Lucy twirling in her graduation gown, Elena smiling beside Paul and David's families. The laughter was real, the light was warm, and no shadows lingered at the door. The Empire of Fear was a ghost, a story from another life. In its place stood this: a sturdy house, a table set for friends, and the profound quiet of a battle finally over. He had traded a kingdom for a kitchen, a throne for a porch swing, and the loyalty of soldiers for the trust in a wife's eyes. The deal, he thought, squeezing Elena's hand, was the best he had ever made. Here, in the peace he had built with his own two hands, the former Don found his forever, and his heart, once armored in ice, rested, finally and completely, at home. The evening air was soft and sweet, carrying the scent of blooming jasmine from the garden. Inside the warm glow of the house, Lucy's laughter rang out, clear and bright, as she showed her law school diploma to David's children. Paul stood by the dessert table, a rare, relaxed smile on his face as he recounted a story that made Elena shake her head with amusement. The room buzzed with the easy, loving chaos of a true family celebration. On the porch, wrapped in the quiet of the night, Vittorio held it all in his view. He saw not just a party, but a fortress he had built, not with concrete and fear, but with trust and choice. Every brick was a legitimate contract, every window a promise kept, every lock disengaged because no enemy remained at the gate. The empire that had once demanded blood tribute now paid dividends in safety and laughter. He felt Elena's hand in his, a familiar, anchoring weight. Her question still hung between them. Did he miss it? He let his mind travel the old, dark corridors of power, the hushed meetings, the swift, brutal justice, the respect that was really fear. It had been a drug, a thunderous, addictive noise. But it was noise that had deafened him, a spectacle that had left him blind. He looked at Lucy, her face alight with a passion for justice that he had helped nurture. He saw Elena, the brave soul who had walked into a den of wolves asking for crumbs and had, with quiet strength, tamed their king. He saw Paul and David, not as soldiers, but as uncles, as brothers, living open lives without looking over their shoulders. The silence he lived in now was not empty. It was full. It was the deep, resonant quiet of a man who had finally laid down a terrible weight. The power he once wielded was a cheap trick compared to the authority he now held, the authority of a husband, a father, a man of his word. "I had all the power in the world," he repeated, his voice a low rumble that held only peace. "It was a loud, lonely thing. It shouts until you can't hear your own heart." He turned to Elena, bringing her hand to his lips for a slow, tender kiss. "You and Lucy, you taught me how to listen again. This," he said, nodding toward the vibrant life inside, "this quiet, crowded room, this is the only kingdom I will ever need." He pulled her close, and she rested her head against his shoulder. They stood together on the solid ground of their making, guardians of a gentle world. The last embers of the old fire were dead, cooled by a love that had proven stronger than steel and more enduring than any legend. The story of the Mafia boss was over. The story of the man, the husband, the father, that story, warm and bright and endless, had just begun. Thank you for watching. Did this story melt your heart? What would you have done in Alina's situation? Let us know in the comments below where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories where love changes everything.